All right, so we've done some opening on the shoulders, we've done some opening on the fronts of the hips, and now we're going to work some more on increasing the flexibility of your thoracic spine, so the mid-back, and opening your chest. So I have a couple of options. People who are newer to yoga, newer to backbending, you can roll up one blanket, and this blanket is going to be thicker and bigger than the one we used earlier. So if you roll from the short side of the blanket, you'll get a little bit fatter roll than when you rolled from the long side of the blanket. If you're more experienced and wanting to work deeper, I'm going to stack up two blankets. Now these are pretty thick wool blankets, so if you have thinner blankets, if you have cotton blankets, you may need more. And we're going to want them to be about this width. So I'm going to roll them up, and I find if I roll with the loose edges together, it stays rolled up instead of trying to unroll as easily. So I'm rolling it quite firmly, you see. So it's a big, firm roll. I'm going to put this a couple, 3 feet from the wall. And I got a block here for my head. Okay, now I'm going to lie down with my shoulder and kind of the mid part of my ribs on this roll. My mid-back is on the roll, my head supported by the block. I'm going to stretch my legs up the wall. When your legs go up the wall, it helps keep you from overarching your low back. So it's really going to put the emphasis and the stretch on your mid-back, which is what we're focusing on right now. Then again, I'm going to stretch my arms up and over. So we're going to get a little more shoulder opening, which we've already been working on, in addition to this big shaping of the back bend in the mid-back. The mid-thoracic spine is being pushed gently towards the front body, and my chest is opening. You can also see this upper abdomen is very open. This is where the diaphragm is. So remember, we are wanting to open the whole front body as a preparation for these big back bends. Now this is a great position to stay for a couple minutes. Breathe and relax. So the in-breath helps us to open the front body very gently. And on the out-breath, I just want to feel that I'm melting over this big roll. And then after you stayed for a minute or two or even 3, I'm going to bring the arms back up and over, roll to my side, and come up. So we are going to continue with passive backbending. And this is a wonderful way, again, to open your front body. We're now going to really open the whole front body. So we've worked on the shoulders, the thoracic spine, the front of the hips, and now we're going to start building this whole dome shape of the back bend. I'm going to start out by showing you a gentler version. Again, if you have a stiffer body or you're newer to back bends or you've had trouble with back bends in the past, you might want to start with this easier one. Using a bolster or stacking up folded blankets to make a shape, a rectangular shape similar to this. It should be firm though. You don't want something squishy like down or a woven, loose woven blanket. It should be very firm. So I'm going to lie down on this with my tailbone just over the back edge. and my rib cage over this edge. My legs will be stretched out straight, my arms will be stretched out straight, so that I'm forming an arch with my whole body. This, as I mentioned, is the easier version. Then I'm going to show the more challenging version, which is a much bigger lift, a bigger arch with the chair. So if I lie down, I sit first so that my tailbone is just over the back edge, the corner of the stack of blankets or the bolster. And then I'm going to lie back. You can keep your knees bent initially. Eventually, we'd like to straighten the legs unless that bothers your back. But we've done all this good front to the hip opening, so I hope you'll be okay. The head's to the floor, and then I'm again going to stretch the arms out. You can let your palms turn up this time. So you see I'm getting this whole dome or arch shape, the whole front body, the hips, the abdomen, the chest, and even some opening on the shoulders. Now at this point, you can go on to whatever kind of backbend you would like to practice. So you could practice Ustrasana, camel pose. You could practice bridge pose, upward facing dog. This preparation has been wonderful for all of these kinds of backbends. I'm going to continue on now with showing some nice setups for wheel pose, Urdhva Dhanurasana, and options to make it a little bit easier if you have a stiffer body. So I'd like to show you a couple options for people who either have not done wheel pose, or it's been a long time, or you've had problems with it, you've had problems getting up off the floor. Hopefully all this good preparation that we've done is going to make it easier. And I would encourage you once or twice a week to do this practice or pieces of this practice, the parts that you need the most, and give your body some time to open up. That will just make it easier over time to be able to get up off the ground in Urdhva Dhanurasana or wheel pose. So one of the problems that people have is getting themselves up off the floor. And this is often due to stiffness or problems in the shoulders or the wrists. So if you set your blocks up this way, lie down on your back, I'll show you in a minute, with your hands on the blocks. That makes it much easier to get up with stiff shoulders and stiff or injured wrists. So I just have the blocks leaned up against the baseboard, and then this bottom edge is kind of dug into the sticky mat, so they usually stay put. It's ideal if you have a little bit wider baseboard here, but usually this works okay even on this thin baseboard. So I'm going to lie down on my back and put your head in between the blocks. Bring your feet in close. And place your hands on the blocks like this. We would like your elbows to point up and not have the elbows go out to the sides. So people that have tight shoulders or weak shoulders, they often end up with the elbow going way out to the side, and that makes it almost impossible to get very far up off the ground. So you want to try to keep the elbows in as much as you can. Walk your feet in close to your hips. And just like the arms, we don't want the feet and the knees to go out wide. So we want to try to keep the feet parallel and your thigh bones parallel. Okay, then I'm going to lift my pelvis up, push on the arms, and come to the top of the head. And you can rearrange your hands as needed, and then give yourself a push up. When you come back down, pull your head through so that you set down, obviously, on the back of your head. So this is a great option if you've had trouble getting up. Related, but a little bit less help, is to use a slant board. So I have my slant board. There's lots of different brands available A lot of studios have them as part of their props, or you can easily order one for yourself. And we're going to use it just like we used the blocks and have it up against the wall or very close to the wall. And that way it won't slide. Especially the ones made out of foam slide more easily. This wood one doesn't go very far. So again, I'm going to have my hands up. So you see, just like the blocks, I've got a bit of a lift on the heel of the hand, so that takes some of the stress out of the wrist and makes it a little bit easier on your shoulders. Walk the feet in close. Again, you can lift your pelvis up, come up on the top of your head, get your hands where you want them, and then press up. Now, one way of deepening your back bend is to stand up on tiptoe and get your pelvis to lift up even more. And then place the heels back down, bend your elbows, and set down. So challenge as we work on back bends is to get the pelvis to lift up, the chest to lift up. And most of us come with one end or the other a little bit tighter. So when you lift your heels up, that actually helps you get more lift up on the pelvis. And on our next one, after we've lifted the pelvis up more, by standing up on tiptoe, we're going to then walk the feet in a little bit closer. So you can imagine when your hands and feet are wider apart, that your pose is going to look more like this. And as you are able to get a little bit closer together, you're going to be able to get lifted up more. And that's our eventual goal, is to have this beautiful big arch shape, dome shape, in which case we have to be a little bit closer together. So as you're ready for that, with or without the slant board or the blocks, not everybody needs that. So if you're comfortable with your hands on the floor, then carry on with that. So the feet parallel, hopefully. One way you can tell where the weight is on your feet, if you start to turn your legs out, then more weight goes to the little toe side. So you want to make sure that you keep the big toe and the inner heel pressed down. If your feet and legs turn out, then you're more likely to get compression in your low back. Okay, so again, I'm going to lift the pelvis up, pause on my head if needed to arrange your arms, and then press up. I'm going to lift the heels up, see if I can get the pelvis to lift more, and then I'm going to walk in a little bit, lift up, and set the heels back down. Now, one more little trick I'd like to show you for helping to deepen. A lot of times when people are up in the back bend, they pull their head towards their butt, and that can put compression on your neck, so make neck pain, and also can contribute to headaches afterwards. I'm going to suggest as a nice little trick to try that you bring your head forward as though you're going to look up at the ceiling instead of pulling it underneath your back and looking at the floor. When I've brought my head through this way, it actually is going to help me open my shoulders, open my chest more. So again, we're trying to find a balance between lifting the pelvis, lifting the chest, and whichever is the harder for you to do, of course, that's what you need to spend more time working on in your practice. Okay, so I'll show you, let's turn around the other way. Pull my feet in close, place the hands, double check the feet are parallel, thighs are parallel, arms are parallel. You may set your head down as I've been showing, but if you don't need to do that, you don't have to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and press up. Stand up on tiptoes, walk in, see if I can get the lift on the pelvis. Set the heels down. Now I'm going to look up at the ceiling, see if I can get more opening in the chest, more lift out of the shoulders. Then let my head relax. Now we recommend that if you're going to do whatever back bend you're going to do, whether it's wheel pose or bridge pose or ustrasana or king pigeon, whatever back bend you're going to do, that you should do several of them. Because the first one that you do will be the stiffest, and it will leave sort of a negative impression in your nervous system. So the first one you consider to be a warm-up, and then you should do at least a few more, several, because each time you go, then your body warms up and is able to go a little deeper, especially as you focus on different nuances of the pose. Then when you've done as many back bends as you're going to do, it's important that you make a transition time so that your body releases, if there is any tension, tightness in your back, that you have a chance to release that. So we're going to take a minute now to do a suggested release of your back and of any tightness that's residual tightness left in your back from back bending. So one lovely way to work is dog pose. And because dog pose is a neutral position for the spine, it's not a back bend, and it's not supposed to be a flexion of the spine either. It's just supposed to be a nice, long, uncompressed line. So rather than going directly from a big back bend to a forward bend, we're going to take a neutral position first. And this is just, you don't have to do this option. It's just one nice option for your dog pose, to have the blocks here, and my feet will be up on the blocks. So giving a bit of lift to my feet gives me a sense of even more length of the spine. It's hard to describe, but once you try it, most people can feel that nice uncompress on your back. So you just place the blocks like this. You're on hands and knees, and then come up into your dog pose. And it may not be as easy to get your heels down, but that's okay because we're doing this really for your back. Okay, so as I lengthen again from hands up out of the wrists and lengthen all the way up, I'm less concerned with my feet, less concerned with the stretch on my legs, and more interested in getting that length up. Nice neutral position for the spine. And then I'm going to set right down into child's pose. My knees are slightly apart. Don't take them real wide though, because I don't want my ribs to go inside the knees. I'd like my ribs to be really supported by my thighs, because that now does put a little bit of flexion in the spine. So this is going to gently stretch the back the other direction from back bending. And then breathe into your back. The expansion of the in-breath into the back ribs, it helps to release any residual tightness there in the back ribs and in the back waist. So after a good solid back bending practice, it's nice to take a position where your spine is in neutral, which means it's not in a back bend, it's not in a forward bend. So it can be a bit stressful to your back unless you're a very experienced practitioner to go from a deep back bending, so arching the back, and then going completely the opposite direction into a forward bend. So I recommend that you do poses where your back is in a neutral position before you go into any forward bending or flexing the spine. So dog pose is a nice pose to feel the neutral spine. There's lots of ways, lots of tricks with dog pose, but we're going to do this one with your feet up on the blocks, which I think is especially nice after back bending. So putting your feet up on blocks, there's nothing magic about it. What it feels like to me is that your feet being a little higher than your hands, there's this nice sense of length of the spine. I feel almost like a waterfall flowing down from my pelvis. So we just come on hands and knees with your feet up on the blocks and come up into down dog. It's harder to get your heels down here, so don't worry about that. We're not doing this as a big leg stretch. We're doing it as an uncompressed for your spine. So from your wrists, we're going to go ahead and lengthen up, wrist to elbow to shoulder, and on up the spine so that your pelvis is lifting really high. And then you have that nice sense of length. It's the neutral position for your back. And then we'll step down and come into child's pose. I recommend that you not take your knees too wide apart because then your body fits in between your knees. But take them just a little bit apart so that your ribs will still be resting on your thighs. And that means that your spine will now come into a bit of flexion. So after the back bending, now we're coming into a soft flexion and inviting the muscles of your back waist and that go up into your back ribs, inviting them to let go. So you can really facilitate that release of the back muscles by breathing into your back. So the back ribs, the back waist, that's going to expand on the inhale. And on the exhale, you just want to let the tension drain out with the outgoing air. Inhale expands the back body. Exhale, relax down. Breathe through your nose, nice and soft. And then place your hands beside your knees, use your arms to press up. Now we're going to do just one more pose to help release your back. I find that if their backs are uncomfortable after a back bend practice, they're less likely to want to practice back bends and integrate them into their home practice. So I think it's important, whatever level you're practicing, that you have a few ways to make sure that your back is going to feel relaxed and comfortable after the back bend practice. So this is a variation of Supta Padangustasana. When we do back bends, we get a lot of lift, a lot of our lift in bridge pose and in wheel pose from the strength of the hamstrings, and the buttocks help also. So this will release those as well as releasing your back. So I'm going to take my right leg up. Normally we do this pose with this leg straight, but this time we are going to let it stay bent because we want to keep a nice long length in your low back. However, make sure that you do not push with this leg and get your whole butt up off the floor. Your butt should be relaxed down on the floor. Since we're heading towards relaxation and towards Shavasana, don't be too aggressive pulling with your arm. And in fact, if you have tighter legs and your leg is out at an angle like this, you might want to rest it on something, so the couch, or if you had a doorway here, I'd rest my foot on the door jamb and this leg would go through the doorway like that. so that if your leg's out here at an angle, you're not having to work so hard to hold it up. I like to put a loop in the belt and just slip my fingers through there so this knee is straight and this elbow is straight. We'll just breathe and relax here a little bit. I'm getting some stretch on the back of the leg, and my low back is really nice and long and solid on the floor, which is comforting to it after the hard work of the back bend. Then the extra little tip here, I'm going to lift my head up as though I was bringing my head towards my knee, and do not force that. This is just an image that the head's coming towards the knee. And what that does is it contracts the front of my neck and contracts my abdomen to lift up. And the theory is that contracting the muscles on the front of the body are going to facilitate the release of the muscles on the back. Same thing is true with any pair of muscles in the body antagonists. If I contract the quad, that will facilitate the release of the hamstring. So by contracting here, that should help me release the back of my neck and release my back muscles. And don't force, just let this be soft. And then unroll down, and we'll change sides. Okay, watch that you don't push with the bent leg. Let your buttocks be heavy on the floor. Your tailbone's a bit heavy. Abdomen relaxed, so you have room to breathe. If you're working too hard trying to pull the leg, the abdomen gets hard and that impedes your breathing, which we don't want, especially as we're heading towards rest now. We'd like your breathing to become more relaxed and softer. So we're releasing the hard work from the back of the leg. And then for just a few breaths now, we are going to contract the front body, the front of the neck, the abdominal muscles. That's going to facilitate the release of the back. Try not to hold your breath though. Keep the breath moving. And then unroll back down. And we want to take this element of relaxation that we've just started and just roll with that right into Shavasana. So scoot out from the wall just a little. I'm going to bring the knees to the chest just to make an even pull on the two sides of the back. And then I'm going to release down. Now, if you've got a rolled up blanket or a bolster, anything that you want to put under your knees, that's very nice to do after a back bend practice. Or of course you can stretch your legs out straight. But I recommend that you do have something under your knees. Open your arms out to the sides. And take a few minutes to rest, so that you balance the amount of effort that you expended in this very active practice. You balance that effort now with your willingness to let go, relax, and soften.